On the latest, sportscaster and her son, Peggy Kaczynski, interviews Dr. Scott Goldman, who administered an intelligence test to quarterback Justin Fields.
Okay, so Dr. Goldman, hang on one second, because we have been talking about how you're protecting the confidentiality of your clients, and we just found out from Justin Fields' agent that it's okay to talk about Justin's scores. This is exciting to us. Now we can finally say yay or nay to what we have heard hearsay in some other reports. So let's talk about Justin Fields.
Hey everybody, it's Aldo Gandhi, and I just want to let you know really quickly that our swag shop is reopened. DeepDishTees.com is where you go, and that's tees with T-E-E-S. Clever name, guys. They're the new home of our merchandise. You can get t-shirts, you can get caps, you can get coffee mugs, you can get hoodies, you can get all sorts of good stuff, and you'll help out the Barroom with the purchase. So head over to DeepDishTees.com.
Going to Wrigley Field was a huge, unforgettable deal that impacted my life.
Well, I think the Cubs winning based upon the gap was one of the biggest championships that have happened in any American sport in a really long time.
The first day that they introduced me, I said, baseball matters on the north side of Chicago. It's one of the, I love baseball and I love fan bases where it's important.
Well, I always hated the idea of the Cubs as lovable losers because I don't think there's anything lovable about putting an inferior product in front of baseball fans.
It would be the highlight of my career to see that happen and to get a chance to call it. And it didn't disappoint.
I auditioned for the new kid. His name was Billy Crystal. I don't know whatever happened. But I'm on the Chad and Ryan show.
Welcome to Friendly Confines, Extra Innings with Chad Gordon and Ryan Lieber.
Hey everybody, Ryan Lieber here, and welcome to the Friendly Confines Extra Innings show. And of course, if you're watching right now, you see it is just myself here online talking to you, and you're probably saying to yourself, well, where's the other guy? Where is Chad tonight? Well, the Cubs and the Padres are playing in San Diego, and Chad is at the ball game. For those who may not know, if you want to, pull the curtain and see what's behind that, Chad lives in San Diego. So whenever the Cubs come to town, he always tries to, well, not tries, he successfully goes to every single Cubs and Padres game, and then he will go up the coast when the Cubs are in Los Angeles to play the Dodgers, or if it's interleague play, they play the Angels. He even got the opportunity to go to San Francisco and watch the Cubs and the Giants play in that 4-game series. He went to the first game. So in Chad's place, I think I have a better co-host anyway. It is our producer, Aldo Gandia, who's joining us tonight, and he's going to do some spot duty to fill in for Chad. How are we doing, Aldo? How you feeling?
I'm a little nervous because I haven't talked Cubs in a long time, but I should tell your audience that I grew up watching the Cubs religiously, probably started in the latter part of the 1967 season when I moved as a kid from New York City to Chicago. And so I lived through the 1969 fiasco when the Cubs blew that 10-game lead in the month of September. And I literally cried when that black hat crossed the Cubs dugout in 1969 against the New York Mets, and it just spelled the end of what was a tremendous baseball season with Glenn Beckert at second base, Kessinger at shortstop, Santo at third, Ernie Banks at first, Billy Williams in left, Randy Hundley, Ferguson Jenkins. I mean, I could give you the lineup, and I was just so in love with that team. And then over the years, other interests and so forth. But I still have a lot of blue in my blood veins, and it's Cub blue. So it's a pleasure being here with you and talking Cubs.
Well, I appreciate it. And it is amazing how that 1969 team, even, 50 plus years later, still resonates with so many people like yourself. And it reminds them of their childhood. Obviously, I was not alive during that time, but I do know for people of your generation or even older, how much that team meant to so many, even though they fell short that season. And of course, lost the division to the Mets. But that is a special team with the players you named. And certainly, even though they, never got to see the postseason, it's still one of the most beloved, if not arguably still the most beloved Chicago Cubs team of all time. And that goes up against the 84 team and the, 2016 team and, insert whichever year you cheered for that team. The 69 team will always be a special ball club for so many people of a generation.
And two very quick points about that season. Opening day, I ran from school to check out the last inning or two of that game, and a guy named Willie Smith hits a pinch hit home run to get the season off with a ninth inning walk-off home run. And the other part of it was Jack Brickhouse. Jack Brickhouse was just sensational calling the games. You had on Scott Simon recently, and he talked about Jack, and Jack was like Uncle Jack to all of us Chicago Cubs fans. He was just a tremendous, tremendous announcer.
So we should mention, of course, we are going head-to-head right now with the Cubs-Padres game. It's currently 1-0. The Padres taking an early lead in the bottom of the first inning. So, of course, we will give you some live updates. And we are going to have a little bit more of a condensed show tonight because of the fact that, certainly we understand, even myself included, I would want to watch the Cubs game like everybody else. But we want to, of course, update everybody on this week and what, of course, happened over the weekend. So, Aldo, without any further ado, you have such a great studio. Mine pales in comparison to what you have in the Bears Barroom studio, and with my container store background. So
I've grown to love it.
Thank you. But with that, let us start, Aldo, in the 10th inning. And I left my wins in San Francisco. The Cubs dropped 3 of 4 to the Giants. The San Francisco Giants are quickly becoming arguably the best team in the National League, or for that matter, in baseball right now. So, Aldo, after how well the Cubs played at Wrigley, and we know they struggle on the road, was there anything you learned about this Cubs ball club as they took on a Giants team that right now you could say is the favorite maybe to come out of the National League and could be a team the Cubs would have to face in the postseason if they got to arguably, let's say, the NLCS?
Yeah, it was really difficult for me to see them lose those first 3 games in San Francisco because they had such an impressive homestand. And so you're thinking, wow, this team is really looking like a contender for this year. But then, you look at some of the nuances of what went on. I mean, they're playing the San Francisco Giants, who might be the hottest team in the National League, certainly one of the hottest teams. They had an excellent home record prior to the series. I believe they were 15-8 prior to the start of that series. And the Cubs were having some problems on the road. And of course, it's very difficult to make that transition. You're playing on a Wednesday in Chicago, and then you're flying out to San Francisco and playing the very next day. So, you can almost excuse it. I think it's really, really important. And we're going to talk about the Padres series coming up, but I think it's really, really important for them to bounce back and build on that win from Sunday and come away with at least, 2 out of the 3 wins to finish this homestand or this road stand.
Yeah, you make an excellent point with that, because I think any baseball team, if they play in the Midwest or the East Coast, it's always harder to go from the East Coast or the Midwest to the West Coast as opposed to the other way around. It's about adjusting your body. It's playing those earlier games. And Chad and I said, even, on our podcast, even last week here on our web show, that if the Cubs could go 500 on this West Coast road trip. That would, certainly be huge if they'd be able to do that. And not only that, go 500 for the month of June, because we know how important this month is going to be for this baseball team, especially knowing what the future will hold once we move into July, pending on where they are in the standings. So I'm usually the one that's gloom and doom, and Chad's always very positive about how this team is, possibly going down certain roads. I have to be honest, I'm not shocked that they lost 3 of 4, because I feel like, again, it's the start of a West Coast swing. The Cubs are trying to get adjusted. They're trying to kind of figure out how to play well in San Francisco, and it's not an easy ballpark to play in. So the advantage right there was to the Giants. And as we said at the top, the Giants are proving to be a very, very good baseball team. I know Chad talks about David Ross being the, early favorite for National League Manager of the Year. I think you got to say it's Gabe Kapler right now for the Giants. So I'm not upset or feeling like things are in a bad place with the Cubs losing 3 of 4, because they can easily, win this series with San Diego, take 2 of 3. And even if, let's say, the worst case scenario, Aldo, they end up going 2 and 5 on this trip before they come back to Wrigley, I still feel confident that this team will come back, play well at home, and obviously do what they need to do against the Cardinals. So for me, the only thing I learned was, we know the Giants are a really good baseball team. The Cubs necessarily aren't in their class, and I didn't think they would be anyway. So I'm not too worried as we look at it moving forward.
And I got to tell you, another thing that I learned is this kid, Wisdom. His first name, what is it? Patrick Wisdom?
Yep.
I frankly didn't know that much about him. And so I did a little research. 29 years old. He's got 6 home runs in the past 7 games. And these home runs are like leaving the park at record speeds. He did it. He generated a lot of that offense off of Kevin Gausman, who was 7-0 with a 1.27 ERA. So pretty impressive performance by Patrick Wisdom, the 29-year-old. What do you know about this guy?
Well, he's hitting .412 going into the game tonight, 7 home runs, 10 RBIs. He was actually in the Cardinals organization. So how nice is that for the fact that the Cardinals gave him up and now the Cubs have him? I'm so looking forward to that series against St. Louis, especially when he's going to be able to play his former team and see what kind of damage he can inflict on them. The other part of it too, Aldo, and obviously this is a reality, and we're going to get into this in, a later inning with Mark Shanowski, who was our guest this week on our podcast, is Patrick Wisdom maybe auditioning for the role of third base if and when Chris Bryant leaves the Chicago Cubs or gets traded, or the Cubs are unable to sign him in the offseason. So these are all kind of interesting storylines to watch as the season goes on. But no, this kid is, you guys have on the South Side your main Mercedes right now, and seeing what he's doing. Patrick Wisdom clearly is the guy for the Cubs now. And he has been so fun to watch. So I hope this guy can continue to blast it like he has been.
It's one of the great things in all the sports, but sometimes it just feels even more special when a guy comes out of nowhere, or a guy who has been trudging along, trying to get to the majors, and finally gets there, and he does special. In baseball, it's magical. It's mythic. It's so cool to see what's happening with Mercedes and now Wisdom. And what a great name, right? Wisdom.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. So let us move on to the 11th inning now, and let's talk about the fact that the Cubs are now back in San Diego, facing off against the Padres. And as we mentioned at the top of the show right now, the Padres leading this one 1-0 in the top of the second. The Cubs are batting right now. And so as the Cubs enter this series with the Padres, what is the most important thing that you would hope to see the Cubs are able to do as they start this 3-game set against a Padres team that they clearly dominated at Wrigley? Now they're playing on the road against them. What do you hope to see from this Cubs ball club over these next 3 games in San Diego?
Well, you want to see victories, of course, first and foremost. So that's obvious. And secondly, if you're not going to win the series, at least be competitive in every game. Don't get blown out. Come out of San Diego feeling good about the performances, feeling good about player health. Hopefully Javi Baez, I guess his thumb is a kind of a day-to-day thing. And I read before the game started that he might be available to play off the bench. I'm not quite sure if that's the case or not, but you want him to get back into the lineup as quickly as possible. There was a great article in The Athletic about Baez and what he has done this season, and his numbers look so impressive compared to how he was after 60 games a year ago. So we're kind of at that same stage. I think the 60th game for the Cubs is tomorrow, but last season Baez was hitting 203 after 60 games. He's hitting almost 40 points better in the batting average. He had 8 home runs last year. He's got 14 this year, 24 RBIs after 60 games last year, 39. And so he's playing better. And so we need him back in the lineup. We need him being the charismatic baseball player that all of Major League Baseball loves to watch. So hopefully he gets back in. I'd love to see him in the starting lineup tomorrow.
Yeah, I think this is a good gauge for the Cubs too, Aldo, because in the series in Wrigley, if you remember, Fernando Tatis Jr. got banged up in that series, and he didn't play in a couple of games. And I think the Cubs took advantage of that, because I think it's safe to say, with Tatis arguably being, one of the, if not the best player in baseball right now, he's certainly, with Chris Bryant, one of the favorites for the MVP award right now, pending his health. He sets the table for the team. He's their leadoff hitter. He supplies power. He supplies speed. He is an absolute, just unbelievable player to watch. I really feel like that if the Cubs are able to kind of come out, counter with the offense that they're bringing, even without Javi, this will be a good opportunity for them to kind of capitalize and say, look, we beat San Diego without him. Even though, hey, listen, a series win is a series win. But if you can prove it with, their best player back in the lineup and do it on the road, to me, I think that's just going to put the Cubs in a better position. I think they're going to feel better about themselves offensively, and hopefully that they're able to kind of continue to, grow as they, before they head back to Chicago, because then they're going to go right back to the West Coast, and then they have that big series against the Dodgers. So for me, I really would like to see, as you said, great points about staying in the game, keeping it close. You want to see the pitching staff, certainly continue to, pitch as well as they have been. But again, if you're able to neutralize those Padre, batters and the offense that they have, it will make me feel so much better before they head back to Wrigley against the Cardinals.
Indeed. I'm with you 100%. I think we're moving to the bottom of the second. It's still 1-0 Padres.
Absolutely. So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to pay some bills, as they say. But when we come back, we're going to hear from Mark Shanowski of WLS ABC 7. Had some interesting things to say. If you didn't get a chance to hear him on our podcast, we have a little snippet about what he thinks the future holds for Chris Bryant and the Chicago Cubs. So stay with us. We'll be right back on the Friendly Confines Extra Innings right after this.
Look, I don't mean any disrespect. He just didn't play that well, not for a guy of his caliber.
If they don't run the ball here, I'm going to vomit. I swear to God.
I don't really have any recollection of that at all, but I guess perhaps I blacked it all out.
They won, but I'm going to be miserable all week because they stunk.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Friendly Confines Extra Innings Show. That is Aldo Gandia. I am Ryan Lieber. And, of course, as we just saw, be sure to check out deepdishtees.com. Not only can you get Friendly Confines memorabilia and hats and T-shirts and mugs, but for all the podcasts that are on the Barroom Network, courtesy of Deep Dish Tees, be sure to check it out. It's got some really, really awesome things. Although I'm just curious, was that really John holding Kurt? Was that him, or is that you got a model doing that?
That was a model, but let me tell you something. John is built much, much bigger and more muscular than that model. John Buffon wants to fight professionally in the boxing ring. So he's been training for several years. It's been his goal, and he's been close to getting into a ring and fighting a professional fight. But injuries have always stopped him from that happening, but he's still in the gym, and this guy is built like a rock. Wow.
pretty remarkable. We also want to reach out and give a shout out to our partners at Golden Rule Entertainment. If you go to goldenruleentertainment.com, you can find out more information about owning a professional baseball team. If it's always been your lifelong dream, now you have an opportunity to be a part of it. Go to goldenruleentertainment.com for more information as we begin the 12th inning. And although, as we mentioned, Mark Shanowski, longtime sportscaster and fixture in the Chicago community, he was kind enough to join us here on the Confines podcast, and we spoke about all things Cubs, and he had some really interesting things to say about Kris Bryant and the future of Kris Bryant and what he ultimately feels is going to happen to the relationship between Bryant and the Cubs. And here's what Mark had to say.
The problem is that the Kris Bryant thing is really, I think, a separate story than the rest of it. Because of the service time thing, the fact that there's hard feelings on the Bryant camp with Scott Boras as his agent, I just don't know if that signing is ever going to be able to get done with the Cubs, unless they offer him exactly what Scott Boras is asking for, which seems kind of unlikely. You know, as good as Kris Bryant has been this year, and he has been fantastic, you know, he's approaching 30 now, and you wonder with the injuries he's had in recent years, are you going to commit to like 7 years? You know, what would it be? $300 million maybe for Kris Bryant? I mean, I don't know, even as well as he's playing, whether Jed Hoyer and the Ricketts family is willing to dole out those kind of dollars.
So although it brings up a great point about this, and I've been hearing it on, you know, the local stations, and whether it's ESPN 1000 or even the Score for that matter, you know, we see these bad contracts in baseball, right? It's whether it's, you know, Albert Pujols or Miguel Cabrera, even you can make the argument about Bryce Harper right now. They don't, you know, end well. Alex Rodriguez, these contracts don't end well. By the time these guys are in their mid to late 30s, you see the progression of how, you know, the downward trend of these guys is, you know, skills. And for the Cubs to sit there and say, we're going to give you $280 million or $300 million for 8 to 9 years. I love Kris Bryant, but to me, that's not smart. I think if you're the Cubs, the move is you got to offer him 5 to 6 tops for like $220 million. So I think that puts him in the ballpark of about 38 to 40 million. I have no problem making him the highest paid third baseman, but give him the AAV, but I'm not giving him the years. And we know who his agent is in Scott Boras. I just don't see a scenario where Boras settles for anything less than 8 years or maybe even 10 years for that matter. So as far as I'm concerned, I have to believe that I think Kris Bryant is playing elsewhere next year. Is that what you would believe too? And is that a safe assumption? I would love to ask you about what you would give him as far as years go and money wise.
Yeah, I agree with you in terms of what the offer should be. And I got to tell you, you're so right about these contracts in baseball. I mean, if I'm going to talk to our buddies over at Golden Rule Entertainment and buying a baseball team, the first thing I would say is I'm worried about these contracts. Now, I know they're not talking about a Major League Baseball team, but isn't that the worry of every baseball manager? I mean, players deserve as much as they can possibly get because they're the attractions. We go see Kris Bryant play baseball. We don't go see, the Ricketts family sitting in the stands. But at the same time, it's just so risky now. When you're making in baseball, it's the guaranteed dollars. So I wish there was a better solution, a solution that seems plausible, but I just don't see how this works out for Chris Bryant and the Chicago Cubs, as much as that pains me to say. My mom is a huge Cubs fan, and she has always got her picture of Chris Bryant nearby. She loves him. She's 82 years old. She wants to marry him and so forth. And when I told her that it doesn't look good for the future of Chris Bryant, she almost started crying. So I feel the same way as a lover of Chicago sports. You hate to lose your superstars, and he's having such a fantastic season, but it just might be that this is going to be his last hurrah with the Cubs.
And the best example I can use of a situation where it's actually worked out was the St. Louis Cardinals not re-signing Albert Pujols. And the Cardinals had just won the World Series, and they made the decision that they gave Pujols I think they actually were offering him short-term wise per year more money than the Angels, but Pujols wanted the security. I think the Cardinals were going to offer him 5 years. And Pujols got the 10 that he wanted, and it clearly turned out to be a horrible deal for the Angels, and it turned out to be the best move the Cardinals never made. So, I don't want to sit here and say that the Cubs are going to, be better without Chris Bryant. I don't think you can say that. Yeah. But I think what you can say is, looking at what his career has been, he has been injured in the past. There have been times where, he has struggled at the plate. And I just don't know how you can conceivably give a guy the 10 years or maybe 9 years that he wants to pay him for that long when he's 38, 39 years old. It's not good business. And again, if I'm the Cubs, 5-6 years tops, but I would have to think they're going to go 5, maybe $210 million for 5 is the offer. And I just think at the end of the day, Scott Boras is going to find a team that's willing to offer him much more and for a longer period of time.
I'm afraid you're right. As painful as that is to say, it's probably going to happen.
All right, so let us finish up here in the 13th inning, and let's preview this week's podcast. And of course, we're really excited to say that Lou Canellis, the main sports anchor on WFLD Fox 32, is going to join us this week. Of course, although you're familiar with Lou being a really big Bears guy, obviously that he's a big, covers the Bears for Fox 32, of course, when the Bears are on there. But we're going to talk Cubs with Lou, and he's going to be kind enough to join us on Thursday, right before we record. So I'm looking forward to kind of hearing from him what he thinks of this Cubs baseball team, because in my opinion, they're the story right now of the summer to some degree, Aldo, and I'll tell you why. I don't want to take anything away from the White Sox, because obviously the White Sox certainly have had a tremendous year. They're exciting to watch. They've overcome so much already. The La Russa story is kind of our version of Chris Bryant, I think, this year. Yeah. But I also think that maybe the Cubs are a little bit of a story of the summer, because nobody is expected to see them where they're at. And right now we have 2 baseball teams in the city of Chicago that are both going to potentially make the postseason for the first time in 13 years together. And, I think when it last happened in 2008, both teams, people felt confident going into the year that they were both very good baseball teams. I don't think you have that this year, with people thinking the Cubs were going to make a dent. Certainly the White Sox, but definitely not the Cubs. What do you think about that assessment?
I think you nailed it. I mean, you go to ESPN.com right now, and one of the cover stories is the headline is "The Cubs are actually good. So what should they do at the trade deadline?" I can't wait to read that from Jeff Pisani. Posted that several hours ago. And you're right. You go to any of the national sports websites, and they're covering the Cubs right now because they're surprising the baseball world. And everyone thought that the trade deadline, you were going to move a bunch of players and you were going to see the start of the rebuild officially, but it's impossible for the Cubs to do that. I mean, if they raised the white flag that the White Sox did, 15 years ago or so forth, when they traded a bunch of key players when they were only 3 games out of first place, and if the Cubs dare to do something like that when they're in first place, oh my goodness, pitchforks and what's the phrase? People are going to be headed down to Wrigley Field to really get upset. It's just not going to happen. The Cubs are a great, great story. It is so much fun to have two outstanding, excellent baseball teams in Chicago. And I think I've told you this before, not when we were on camera, but I told you one of my goals in life has always been, man, a Cubs White Sox World Series, 7 games, go extra inning in Game 7. That's my dream as a sports fan.
It really would be amazing to see that. I mean, the city would just be, I don't even know how the city would react. You'd have families just absolutely not speaking to each other for, weeks at a time. Absolutely. But no, it would be absolutely the coolest thing to see in the city when it comes from a sports standpoint, if we got that opportunity. I truly believe that, although, I mean, listen, the Bears winning the Super Bowl again would certainly be something that you would unite the city of Chicago and would be a big deal. And of course, you got the Bulls 6 championships, but to see a Cubs White Sox World Series, I don't know. I mean, I think that could be the biggest sporting event the city has ever seen. If that were to happen, it has to be.
I totally agree. Well, anyone that makes the argument that this is a Bears town first and foremost, I won't disagree with that. But a Cubs White Sox World Series would be the greatest, biggest story in Chicago sports history, and it's no contest.
Yeah, without a doubt. Well, we'll keep dreaming, Aldo. We'll keep dreaming. That is going to wrap things up on this edition of the Friendly Confines Extra Innings Show. Once again, our thanks to Aldo for pinch hitting for Chad tonight. We really appreciate it. Aldo, I'm going to make you the official replacement now. It's just you and me. We're going to kick Chad out. Yeah.
Anytime I do a show with you, it's going to be great. So I appreciate your support and you asking me to pop in.
Absolutely. And of course, you can find Aldo at Barroom Network. You can find me at Ryan D. Lieber. You can find Chad at the Chad Gordon. Don't forget to check out our Facebook page as well. It's the Chicago Cubs Friendly Confines Facebook page. We'd love to have you join the conversation. And stay tuned for our podcast that we are dropping this week with our guest, Luke Canellis from WFLD Fox 32. So for Aldo, I'm Ryan. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. Thanks so much, and we'll see you at the ballpark.
Bye-bye.